Hi, I'm Tracy Ackerman, the designer and creator behind KeLibu. I make patterns, costumes, and accessories for 14 to 20-inch dolls. If you're new here, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell so you'll always know when I post new content. Today, we're going to be assembling and finishing our steampunk jetpacks. So let's get creating. We're on the final leg of this jetpack assembly. So the first thing I want to do is get these inner pieces connected. And to do that, I'm going to be using some heavy-duty contact cement. I like these tubes because they don't dry out. I've had the tins with the brushes before, and I find I don't use it often enough that it doesn't dry out and I'll stick together before I get a chance to use it. So with the contact cement, you're going to want to put it on both of the pieces that you are sticking together. Now this is my back piece, and I'm just using an old gift card to spread this contact cement around. And then I want to make sure that I'm putting my middle piece next, which I want to have this little bit on the left side. So I know I want it to sit on the back like that. So I'm going to apply the contact cement to this piece as well. And what you need to do with the contact cement is actually let it dry, for lack of a better term. When it's still wet, it's going to be all shiny like it is right now, but as it starts to set, you can see it's gone kind of this matte tacky look. It's got this matte tacky look over here, and that's what we want the whole thing to look like before we attempt to stick those two pieces together. So while those are setting up, I'm just going to set them to the side. I'm going to apply some to the back of my front piece as well. So this is how it's going to be sitting when I'm looking at the front of the jetpack, and I can tell because the edges are beveled in and this hole is on the left side, which is where I want it to be. So I'm going to apply some contact cement to the back of this to set up while the other pieces are setting up, and then after I stick those together, I will put some contact cement on the other side of the middle piece so I can stick it to this front piece. These are pretty tacky now, so I'm going to stick them together. Again, because these are on the inside, it's not critical that they get lined up exactly, but you should try and do your best to keep the top and bottom edges pretty flush, because otherwise it might form some weird ridges when you wrap the outer piece around. So as you can see, once you've stuck these pieces of foam together with contact cement, they are good and stuck. They are not coming apart. So I'm just going to apply some to the top of this middle piece now, so that when it's all set up, I can put the top piece of this inner form on. This contact cement has set up, so I am going to put these pieces together. Now, the most important thing I want to do is make sure I line up this hole as well as the tops and the bottoms. And it went together pretty well. Remember, we have these concave sides that our tubes are going to sit in. So I'm going to put this aside for a minute, and we're going to start putting rub and buff on things. I'm going to start with the pieces that I'm going to make pewter colored, and remember to give your tubes a good squeeze just to incorporate the oil back into the wax paste before you use them. Because these pieces are pretty small, I'm going to be using a Q-tip to do the application, and that'll help me also get into the little nooks and crannies of these bottom pieces that I'm going to be using. For this guy, because we're really only going to be seeing the front and a bit of the side, I'm not going to bother painting or rub and buffing the entire piece, just the sides of the top and the top of this. As you can see, the pewter comes out as a nice antique looking silver. It's not super bright. And one thing I found with putting the rub and buff onto the painted plastic is if you try and do the buff part immediately after putting it on, it will sometimes pull off. So I actually put them to the side for about 10-15 minutes to just let the rub and buff set before I do the buffing portion. So go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to show you what other pieces I have, and then I'm going to do this off camera so you're not sitting and watching me rubbing things forever. We've got the little top and bottom pieces that are going to go around our goo canister. We've got the top piece for the goo canister that the rivet and the hose is going to be coming out of, and we've got the two knobs that are going on the front of the Jetpack. If you want to do a different color scheme than me, that's fine. I'm just letting you know what I'm doing on mine. So I've got these all done, including the insides of my little jet bottoms here, and I'm going to set these aside to just set up for about 10-15 minutes before I buff them. The next thing that I'm going to do is apply my Spanish coffee to the main part of these tubes. I'm going to do the bottom part in antique gold, but I'm going to do this top part in Spanish coffee. And because it's such a large area, it's going to be hard to do with a Q-tip, so I'm actually going to be using a glove. Just remember, squeeze your tube before you use it to incorporate all the oil back into the wax paste. You could do this with just your finger, but it gets pretty messy and it is a bit hard to get off of your skin. So I'm just going to go ahead and use this glove. So go ahead and apply the Spanish coffee or whatever color you're using to the tops of your tubes. Now that I have these covered in Spanish coffee and I let them sit for a bit and buffed them, I'm going to be using my antique gold to cover the main piece of the Jetpack as well as the little bottoms of the tube. I'm going to use my glove to cover this piece because it is larger, but I am going to use a Q-tip to cover this piece because it'll give me a little bit more precision than the tip of my finger. Alright, just to show you, I've got my main piece done in the antique gold and these ends of the jet tubes. I'm going to set these aside to set up for a bit and then I will buff them. And next we're going to do what the autumn gold, which is actually a copper. So I've got the Jetpack bands, the two small ones and the long one. I've got my compass ring, I've got the frame for the goo canister, and I've got my grill for the top of the Jetpack. So I'm going to go ahead and use a Q-tip and color all of these with my autumn gold. I finished up with the autumn gold, and I just wanted to show you with the compass ring. I've just gone a little ways onto the back. You don't have to do the entire back because it's going to be sitting flush against the Jetpack body, and I've just done the inner ring here. For the foam pieces, in addition to putting the autumn gold on the top, I've also covered the sides. You don't have to do the short ends, but just do these long edges. And for the goo canister, I've gone and done every edge, as well as the grill. We've done every edge. Before I glue these nozzle ends onto the jet tubes, I'm just going to insert an eyelet into this space here so that I can later attach my tube, which is the weed whacker line, in. I have run out of Loctite glue, so I'm actually using Gorilla Super Glue today because Loctite is not easy to find in my city for some reason, and I have to order some. So I'm just using a set of tweezers to hold my little eyelet. I'm going to apply some glue around the edge, and I'm going to stick it into that little space. Alright, I've got both my little eyelets installed, and I've started my glue gun heating up because I'm going to be using it shortly. Now, if you don't have a convenient little place to put these eyelets in, the other thing that you could do is measure a length of a foam strip around here. Cut a little strip that will fit around the perimeter and install the eyelet into that and glue it in place. What we're going to be doing now is putting glue around the top of this and attaching it to our jet tube. So I'm going to do that. What you want to do is apply it all along this top ridge, and then you want to let it set up for a bit so it can get tacky. So don't try and do it right away. Just set it off to the side and let it set. Once your glue is set up a bit, you're just going to want to try and center the little nozzle on the bottom of your jet tube. Hold it in place to give it time to grab on. And then once it's stuck on there, I would just set it upright so that the tube is resting onto the jet nozzle, and just leave it alone while we complete a few other steps of the project so it can form a nice, good seal. Alright, I've got the pieces of my compass ring here. I know that this little bit is going to sit into the jetpack like that, and you can kind of see on the back here where the ring portion is. So I know that I want to get my gauge in so it's going to be sitting upright when we install the compass ring. Now, my preference is to glue this little dial down so it doesn't flop around on the inside, but you can glue it or not as you prefer. I'm just going to put a tiny drop of glue into the hole on the spinner and just set it somewhere arbitrary. And then before you put your plastic piece back in, just make sure you give it a good clean on the inside because it's going to be a little bit tough to get it out. Again, once you've installed it, and push it into place, it should fit back in snugly, and there we go. I'm going to set this aside now until we're ready to install it on the front of our jetpack. Next thing we're going to do is mark our rivet placement on these jetpack bands. I'm going to use my dark ink pen to do that, just so I can make sure that I can see my marks. Okay, and once you've got those marked, you need to mark the small ones as well. You're going to use an awl to poke through the foam at the rivet points, and take your mini brads and push them through. Now, because this first one is very close to the edge, rather than opening it up behind, I'm actually just gonna push both prongs over to one side, like so. But for the rest of them, I will be opening them up flat on the back. If you are using those little nail head iron-on nail heads instead of brads, then obviously don't poke the holes. You can just glue those in place at the marks that you've made. So go ahead, prep all of your bands. Make sure that your prongs are lying within the foam piece, not sticking out to the sides, otherwise you'll see them. And go ahead and apply them to the long band as well as the short bands. I've got the brads installed on all my bands, so I'm going to set those to the side. The other thing that we need to put brads into are these little knobs. So you can either put the brads in through the hole and extend the prongs and just trim them down as needed with a set of wire cutters, or you can do what I'm going to do, which is to apply a little glue on the top of the bead, stick the brad through and leave the prongs straight so that when we glue these to the front of the jetpack, the brads will actually pierce into the front of the jetpack as well. So whichever way you want to do it, go ahead. I'm going to apply these now, and then we'll move on to the next step. We are ready to start on our final assembly. So I'm just going to be using my glue gun to hold the front piece of our craft foam on here, and I'm going to just secure the front first so that I can make sure I am lining up my holes. Alright, as we wrap this around to the back, we're going to stretch it slightly. Just apply a little bit of hot glue here. This way we're going to make sure we get a nice tight fit. And if there is a tiny bit of a gap, it's not a big deal because we are going to be covering that join with one of our bands that we put rivets into. And just hold that in place. There we go. Now we're ready to add a couple of our bits on the front here. So I'm going to be installing the compass ring into this hole. It's going to be, there'll be a bit of a friction fit that'll keep it in place, but I'm just going to add some hot glue to make sure that it stays good and secure. Oops. Next, we're going to put our little nozzle piece in, and same sort of thing. I'm just going to put a little bit of glue around the edge here to help hold this in place. Pop it in, give it a little bit of pressure. Now we need to figure out where we want our goo canister. So I'm thinking I'm going to put it right about there. I'm just going to slip the canister into the frame. The reason I'm doing it this way is I just want to make sure I get the canister in the correct, or the frame in the correct spot, so that it doesn't warp when I put it down and the canister will still fit inside. So just place that carefully because you won't have much of a chance to shift it around. And once that's done, I'm going to apply the top to my little goo canister here, and then we're going to apply our little strips along the top and the bottom just to make it look a little bit nicer. So I think I'm going to apply these with hot glue just because my Gorilla Glue is pretty liquidy right now and I don't want it all over my fingers again. And then go back and clean up all the glue strings. So I'm going to put my bottom piece on the same way, and then we're going to put our knobs on. Next, I want to place my little knobs that I've made. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball it, and then because I left the brad tails long, I'm going to poke that in there. For this one, I think I am going to use my Gorilla Glue just to make sure that piece stays good and secure. And stick it in place. I'll just hold it for a couple seconds to let that glue set, and then I'm going to do the exact same thing with the other one. I'm just going to place it off to the side of that one.